Alright, well, I just want to get it out of the way because I know I'm going to see questions about it down below, but why in the world am I dressed like Juno from Clairo today? Well, it's because the song has been stuck in my head for days. So, yeah, that's that. Oh, baby, but against all odds, nevertheless, we are here. We've persisted. There is a brand new Minecraft snapshot out now. Let's take a look. Miners and crafters alike, we can rejoice because Netherite, the Netherite update returns. In the previous snapshot, tragically, one of the saddest moves of all time happened. Alright, this one's a little glitchy too. Okay, yeah, so this is a little reminder for you. If you're playing the snapshot in your long-term world, the one that you love, know more than that Clairo song, well, you gotta be careful. You make sure you back stuff up because just like with last week's snapshot, already from messing around with this thing for like 20 minutes, I've found kind of a lot of bugs. For example, tragically, in last week's snapshot, a netherite was kind of removed from the game. Like, I mean, the stuff was still in the game, but as soon as you picked it up and put it on, it would just turn straight up into diamond armor, leading everybody to think the netherite was definitely removed from the game and being deleted in Minecraft 1.21.2, and not a single one of us thought it was just a bug, no. Kind of related to netherite in the sense that, I mean, well, it's armor. Actually, in last week's snapshot, gold had a sneaky little buff that not even I noticed. Inside of the snapshot, gold actually got a little bit more durability, like we're talking the armor. It was approximately doubled for some strange reason, and, well, unfortunately, the doubling is no longer here. For example, I think the golden chestplate had like 170-something total durability. It was odd, it was strange, and most importantly of all, it went unnoted, and this guy is annoying me so much. Go away. Now, earlier this week, there's no way you didn't hear, but Minecraft has switched things up big time. They're doing updates completely differently now. Instead of focusing on big, large main releases, we're going to focus on smaller things called drops that will drop a little bit more frequently. For the first time in weeks, inside of this snapshot, we don't really have any substantial changes to any of these experimental toggles, but each one of these toggles sure smells a whole lot like a drop, doesn't it? I wonder what's going to happen with some of this stuff. Like, for example, the really big one to me that I really wonder about is the bundle. With bundle adjustment, development, and toggling seemingly beginning to roll towards a slow stop, I wonder if we're going to see a bundle drop soon. Now, I said there were no changes to the experimental toggles this week. That's not exactly entirely true. One change with the bundle here, if I would scroll and select something and then tap a number on my keyboard to move it to the hotbar, well, that still works. I can leave an item fully shown off inside of the bundle, which is, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's kind of cool. However, related to the bundle inside of this week, we have a couple of resource pack changes directly relating to the bundle right down here. It basically relates to the highlighted item within the bundle and how you exactly want that item to show off. And a huge move for custom model makers, custom models are now supported inside of the bundle as well when it's open. And alongside that one, highlighted on screen, you can see a couple other more minor bug fixes relating to the bundle that went down inside of this snapshot. Most of those fixes having to do with items and how they look inside of the bundle. And one of the more annoying things inside of this snapshot, the whole like quick clearing the inventory creatively, it just doesn't work still, so yeah. And now you'll have to excuse me for this one. Okay. Well, that's a new one. All right, now, this time for real, you'll have to excuse me for this one because I'm going to go ahead and let one rip. Riptide tried it right here into the portal. I meant through the portal right there, and as you can see, nope, not so fast. As you can see, it still is not really working. Now, I just want to show you this time that I have gone into the nether, and I definitely have loaded these chunks before. But back inside of the overworld, if I let one rip right through the portal, unfortunately, yeah, still, it doesn't work, even though it's stated to work inside of this snapshot. Next up, moving on. They still haven't fixed the squid, and I'm going to talk about it in every single snapshot until they fix it. If there is a baby squid in the game, well, how in the world does the baby squid exist? Come on, we're in the drop era now. Let's make the drop era of squid farming a thing, please. Inksack Farm. Let's go. Make it happen. But anyways, saltiness aside, the salmon, and the different sizes, they have been patched inside of this week's snapshot. So this is kind of perfect. The biggest salmon, literally, that I have ever seen. I pick it up inside of the bucket. The size is going to be preserved, but even better now, when I place it back down, the size doesn't, like, visually glitch as small and then, like, gigantify or anything. It's just big from the start. Now, how is this happening? I'm a big picture kind of guy, so you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe what's going on here is an entity sub-predicate. We have a brand new sub-predicate for the salmon, which is small, medium, or large. I think that's making it a little more smooth. Tragically, just like the gold nerf inside of this snapshot, we have a nerf to skulls and carved pumpkins as well. In last week's snapshot, it was a seemingly undocumented change, so probably clearly a bug considering the fact that it is now removed, but previously you could have used a pumpkin like I'm just pressing the use button right now, and it would equip like a helmet. How it's been for years, keep in mind, is that you need to manually equip the thing yourself, and yeah, that whole manual equipping thing, that has been restored. Also, inside of last week's snapshot, sneakily, it seems like we had a little tease to a big change inside of this week's snapshot. My friends, an ender pearl, how does it work? If I take the ender pearl and I throw the ender pearl, it's gonna travel, land somewhere, and then teleport me. But what if, maybe theoretically, I threw this ender pearl really, really far, or at least like farther than my render distance, maybe it wasn't very high. How would that work if a chunk wasn't loaded in? So a Minecraft world, we all know it, we love it, it's built up of chunks, a 16 by 16 block area. Depending on your specific settings right here, the amount of chunks that are actually going to be loaded around you will vary. How it has worked for, well, essentially forever is you need to be inside of a chunk, or somebody in the server needs to be inside of a chunk or near it for that chunk to actually be loaded in. But now, oh, well now, my friend, ender pearls, and this might be a revolutionary farm change. So straight up from the changelog now, when an ender pearl travels through a chunk, that chunk is now going to be loaded. That means, let's say I stood right here in this chunk and threw this ender pearl straight back over this way. Well, as soon as it crosses into that chunk, and that chunk, all of those chunks, respectively, were just loaded while the pearl was there. Even more beautifully, this change is going to work interdimensionally as well. If I throw this pearl through the nether portal, well, I can't see it right now, but I know that the nether chunks were loaded, and then eventually when I land in the flaming lava, this is why I do it in creative mode. Hey, eventually when I land in the flaming lava, because I'm a fool and I didn't think about where I was setting myself, well, the nether was loaded. That was seamless. Again, if I go ahead and throw it back this way, no like jumping to the portal or anything, I throw it back, and yeah, pretty seamlessly, just like that, I'm sent back into the overworld. Now keep in mind, this stuff is pretty smart too. Depending on the direction at which I am facing the portal and I throw the pearl, it will go into the nether and understand, like, the directions of the portal and everything. So this stuff is all pretty advanced and pretty smart. And now chunk loaders. Now, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't had a bunch of time to test this one, but a chunk loader. AKA something simple like this. Down at the bottom of this thing for my setup, I have a soul send. Then I have a bubble column activated right there, only about 10 or so blocks tall. If I go ahead and stand over here, and I will pull it off in survival, I'll show you that it works. If I stand over here and throw the pearl down, if I get my toss just right, and it comes up and it doesn't touch that trap door, well, now I've got an ender pearl sitting right here, essentially, to my understanding, loading this chunk. Now look, I'll admit it, I'm not the most familiar with ender pearl stasis chambers. I know how they work, but yeah. Inside of the snapshot changelog, we have a little paragraph right here with a couple bullet points onto these changes. Related to the chunk loading stuff, ender pearls will now behave, well, they'll now kind of behave like a vehicle, if you will. Let's say I was in this boat right there, and then I logged off of the server. Meanwhile, my friend, Carol Chicken, who is not inside the boat, but standing next to it, well, as soon as I log out, while sitting inside of the boat still, Carol Chicken, from the angle inside of her gorgeous dark eyes, well, that boat, and myself, we've demanifested, we don't exist. The same thing is going to happen with an ender pearl. If I throw an ender pearl and then log out of the server, well, that ender pearl, any of them that are mine, they're going to disappear and reappear when I log back in. That's just like what happens when you're riding an entity, a boat, a camel, a minecart. Now I'm gonna have to test stuff out here, or maybe if you understand it more, I'll tell you about it down below, but does this mean that I can effectively set up a chunk loader with an ender pearl inside of a bubble column? Maybe say loading my iron farm while I'm far, far away from the thing? Oh boy, that's interesting. Additionally, inside of this snapshot, support for the language High Norwegian. I don't know why I said it like that, but I feel like it could only be said like that, right? Torch culling, or just block culling in general. Long story short, what that means is sides of the block that are not visible becoming invisible, and it's back. Previously, if I placed the torch down and jumped into spectator, took a look at the bottom of the torch, I would be able to see it, instead of it being fully transparent like it is right here. Oh, but talking about torches eyes, you still gotta fall in love with this redstone one. That is so juicy looking. I love it. I hate to do it to this poor pig, it knew nothing better, but the sweet berry bush will now damage entities again. Previously, it stopped damaging entities. Quite tragic. Projectile deflection and just full straight out blocking. It's been fixed up a little bit inside of this snapshot. I can now deflect a projectile. Any projectiles that are deflectable are now better deflectable again.
Stop pressing the button, buddy.
Yeah, the projectiles, though, they're back to normal. More deflectable, more blockable. And actually, in the case of some explosive projectiles, they are a little bit less explosive again. They were way too dangerous before. All right, now, directly related to this whole new drop system, Mojang, Minecraft, the devs over here on Java side have been working on making it easier to add things to the game through the help of, like, data packs, basically components and things like it. Inside of this week's snapshot, we have quite a few different component changes. For example, fire resistant is now damage resistant, and then you have different types inside of it that you can define. Potion, contents, item, name, equipable, death protection, and more. Now, we talked about the salmon subpredicate, but the sheep subpredicate, we have brand new one, sheared or colors. Now, you might remember, one of the big things we talked about in last week's snapshot had to do with preserving the percentage of health that a mob has when it converts over. So let's say I damage this thing to 50% of its health, then it would convert over to a zombified piglin like it does in the overworld and still have 50% of its health. Well, that change has actually been reverted. Conversion details, though, we've got quite a few. All of the conversion details that you could dream of having in your life are right here. This conversion stuff, it applies to things like piglins turning to zombified piglin, villager turning to witch, villager turning to zombified villager maybe turning back. Due to some of the changes in last week's snapshot, there were quite a few bugs that actually occurred when converting mobs. For example, super speedy witches that were converted from villagers or zombies, not converting villagers at all, just like taking them out, removing them from life. Hey, and speaking of mob conversion, can we get this mechanic in vanilla Minecraft? Like, you feed a piglin a nether wart and it gets a little bit more life in the overworld? That would be so cool and so useful for transport. But yeah, anyways, this mob conversion stuff, it's gotten a whole lot more fleshed out here, as you can see. There's some properties that were mentioned inside of this specific bug that are intentionally not transferred, though. Anytime, anywhere, anymore. Experience villager data, loot tables, health, gossips, and attributes. Hey, and speaking of loot tables, the technical changes with loot tables, they exist here too. Now, this has to do with individual loot tables for a block, let's say a sus block, and what tool you're going to use to access that loot table. If I'm interpreting this correctly, I think this means it makes it theoretically easier to add more sus blocks with a different brush loot table, or more vault blocks with a different key loot table. Intriguing. And so, last but not least, where I want to wrap things up for today's super technical snapshot. Hopefully next week or sometime soon we get something new and spicy, like maybe as part of a new drop, like a new block or something. That would be cool. Where I want to wrap it up today, though, is boats. Boats have received quite a few bug fixes inside of this snapshot, including a gigantic buff. Previously, how it would work if you fell a specific amount of blocks, it was quite odd. Well, if you've ever fallen from anything at any amount, then you've noticed that the boat canceled fall damage, and that's how it's meant to be. But if I fell specifically 12 blocks, the boat would actually cancel no fall damage, and I could unlife. This was actually the oldest bug fixed in today's snapshot, a bug that was 6 years old, and alas, no longer it lives. So anyways, today's snapshot, the Clairo song, Ender Pearl chunk loading. You tell me all about it down below. Tap that like button and subscribe for more. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been me, Waddles, on the End Card, a playlist for you. Channel members get some cool extra benefits. Consider becoming one today to support me out a little bit more directly. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.